All right, today we're jumping into a really fascinating personal experiment. It gets right to a big question. On a professional platform like LinkedIn, do the algorithms actually treat men and women differently? Let's find out.
So, what's the deal here? Why would professional women even think about pretending to be men on LinkedIn? Well, it all started when one woman claimed her online reach just exploded after she simply changed her gender on her profile. That story got another writer thinking, and she decided to run a little test of her own. It really makes you wonder, right? What is going on behind the scenes with these algorithms?
Okay, so let's get into the experiment itself. And I want to be super clear here. This isn't some huge, formal scientific study. No, this is a personal, boots-on-the-ground experiment driven by one woman's curiosity. She just wanted to figure out how things really work on LinkedIn for someone like her. So the spark for all this came from an article in the Washington Post about a woman named Megan Cornish. Her story was so wild that a writer named Rachel Haidt read it and thought, I have to try this. But she decided to put her own little spin on the experiment.
And this is her big idea, her hypothesis. Here's the twist. She wasn't going to touch her gender on her profile. She kept that the same. Instead, she asked a really interesting question. What if I just change the tone of my posts? What if I make them sound more, stereotypically masculine? Would that alone be enough to get the algorithm's attention?
So how exactly did she do this? How do you just sound more masculine in your writing? Well, her method was actually super simple, and it involves a tool that, let's be honest, pretty much all of us are using these days. It was a really simple three-step plan. First, she'd write a post just like she always does, in her own voice. Second, she'd take that post and feed it into ChatGPT with a very, very specific prompt. And finally, she'd publish the new version that the AI spit out. That's it. And get this is the exact prompt she used. It's so blunt, I love it. She didn't say make it more assertive or more confident. Nope, she told it flat out to make it sound like a man wrote it. I mean, that one single instruction is basically the entire engine for this whole experiment.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. Let's look at the tale of two posts. What did her normal style look like compared to this new masculine style? And the big question, what happened? What were the results?
So on one side, you've got her typical style, right? It was empathetic, educational, and she used things like emojis to make it more visual and connect with people. But the AI-generated masculine style, totally different. It was way more assertive, it stripped out most of the emojis, and it was just laser-focused on getting the point across. And wow, just look at this. The results were, well, they were pretty wild. It was immediate and the difference was huge. The posts with that masculine tone got way more impressions. We're not talking a small bump here. The reach was significantly undeniably higher. So when you see a chart like that, your first thought is probably, okay, I found a hack, right? But is this really a surefire way to beat the algorithm? Well, the author herself is actually the first person to tell you to pump the brakes. And it's really important to mention this. LinkedIn's official position is that there is absolutely no gender bias on their platform. So that's their side of the story, and it's key context for what Haidt found in her own little experiment. And I just love this quote directly from Rachel Haidt. She says, "Do I have enough data to conclude that this is a true hack? Nope, nada, that is a negative ghost writer." She's totally upfront about it. She's being playful for sure, but her point is dead serious. This is just something she noticed. It's not a proven fact. So let's be really clear about the limits here, which Heidi herself points out. She says, look, this is not a true hack. There are just way too many other things that could be influencing the results. Plus, these algorithms change all the time. So at the end of the day, what she found is a really compelling hunch. But that's all it is, a hunch, not a hard fact. All right, so if this isn't some secret code to crack the algorithm, then what's the point? What's the real takeaway here? Let's zoom out a bit and look at the bigger picture that she's trying to get at. At the end of the day, this whole thing isn't really about gaming the system. The real message is about taking control of your own professional presence online. It's about being your own best advocate, being curious, and not being afraid to test things out to make sure your voice is being heard. And this leads her to a really powerful point. She says what women need isn't just more mentorship, people giving them advice. What they need is more sponsorship. And that's different. Sponsorship is when someone in power actively advocates for you and opens doors. They're not just giving advice, they're putting their own reputation on the line to create real opportunities. And her last piece of advice is super important. It's all about community. Basically, if you figure something out that works, don't keep it to yourself. Share what you've learned.
The whole idea is to help everyone else navigate these tricky digital platforms together.
So all of this leaves us with a pretty big question to chew on. Rachel Height's experiment was just one person's experience, sure, but it points to something much bigger we should all be thinking about. Just how much of your online world, your career, the opportunities you see, is being shaped by biases baked into algorithms that we can't even see. It's definitely something to think about.